Hi everybody, this is Captain Logan, and I'm back once again for a quick addendum on the Batman Returns Superhero Rewind Unscripted episode I did the other day. I am still kind of working out the kinks a little bit with this off-the-cuff format, and there were several kind of fun and interesting things that I didn't get a chance to mention, despite the fact that that is a really long video, and I spent a good hour after the first hour, 20 minutes or so chatting with the audience. So I know that that's already really long, and there's a lot of discussion and opinion and information in that video, but I have a podcast. But I have a bunch of kind of fun chronological stuff I want to go through, so I'm just going to read down the notes that I didn't get to. Are you ready? So this is going to be in the order, pretty much, that events happen, and I could have saved these notes for a commentary, but I don't know when I'm going to get to another commentary on Batman Returns, so I thought I would go ahead and just deliver this to you while I've got a few minutes here in the afternoon. I hope everybody's day is going well. Thanks for being here. If you happen to be watching live right now, I'm going to go ahead and just read the stuff down. Here we go. So I thought it was tragic irony or poetic justice that we have a movie about tragedy with characters I find little sympathy for. More the Penguin than Catwoman, certainly. Made by a guy who struggles to relate to people and doesn't have a script with the words that he needs to communicate that tragedy. That is a notion that I talked about in the podcast, but I didn't mention the kind of connection to the tragic irony or poetic justice line, which I liked, so I thought I'd mention that. Anyway, here's the chronological stuff. So we have a teaser before the opening credits, which is different from 89 and immediately suggests that this is a different animal. I think that's smart. The opening credits reflect the original, but from the villain's POV this time, instead of going around a bat symbol and pulling back, and we discover that that's what we're looking at. It's more about the Penguin than Batman and the villains might take over. So the sewer, so we're going through the sewer, which is like a cesspool of Penguin's mind, in the same way that the bat symbol is kind of like exploring Batman's dark psyche. We have some immature, forced social commentary on gender roles that seem dated already in 1992. That's a thing I talked about in the original Rewind, but didn't mention really the other day much. The I'm a woman line always seemed a little bit too novel, like, ooh, Batman's finding a girl this time. Penguin has a toy duck outside his cage when he is with his parents as a baby at the beginning of the movie, which I'd never noticed before. I weirdly got Barry Sonnenfeld vibes watching the movie this time, which was not a thought I had had before, and I wonder how much Tim Burton movies were influential on his work. He, of course, made Men in Black and the pilot for the Patrick Warburton Tick Show and such. This is Penguin's movie. He is more of the real protagonist, even though he is malicious from the beginning. I kind of tiptoed around that idea in the video the other day. He's like Kal-El coming from Krypton in his basket coming into Gotham. Why are these penguins under the zoo? Is Gotham always cold enough to sustain them? That was a question I had. And then I wanted to mention that this sets precedents for motifs and formulas in other superhero movies to come. Some Batman things, some other things. So first of all, we've got to have two villains. We've got to have one that is sort of established and the other who gets a full-on origin. Though Penguin has an origin here too, but we don't see him become the Penguin. He's already got that identity. We see him just make his presence known. One villain lives, one villain dies at the end. One is self-repressed and socially awkward, a misfit who comes out of his or her shell, and kind of like Amazing Spider-Man 2 will years and years later do weirdly with its Electro. One villain has to fall to his death at the end. That's a thing we do a lot. And then here are some commonalities between Batman and Penguin that I didn't touch on the other day. Both born of high society, both have their innocence robbed from them, both raised by surrogate families, both operate from underground, both urban myths written about in the newspaper and believed to be more creature than man. Both go after an evil, corrupt business tycoon, though one is a mobster and the other isn't, and both antisocial and weird with women, though only one is a straight-up pervert. None of this is really brought to the fore. There's a difference between subtlety and subtext and missed opportunity. Batman and Joker have that we're the same moment, but that's not here for these two. I wonder what Selina was going to say when she interrupts the board meeting at the beginning with the question she never gets to answer. She's like, it's more of a question. We never get to find out what that is. Is she already suspecting Shrek is stealing power or planning to steal power with his power plant? I wonder. There is no security around this mayor at all. It's really easy for the Red Triangle gang, the circus gang, whatever, to show up and attack, and it happens multiple times, and security never gets any better. Bruce just waits around for the bat signal to come on every night, I guess. He's not really doing anything. He's just sitting in his chair like this. I hope I get to be Batman this evening. Batman's car gets a dramatic introduction, but Batman doesn't. And that's this movie. It's all about the trappings. The sets and the props are the real heroes here. I talked about how it's avoiding sequelitis real hard. It does have sequelitis in places, and here's an example. It becomes self-parody really quickly, which happens with a lot of sequels. It jumps the shark pretty fast with the silly action sequence with the Batmobile spinning on a pedestal. It feels like it's trying to top the first movie with its action while it's desperate to avoid comparison otherwise. I've mentioned this in several other places before, but I don't like this Batsuit as well as the one in '89. I think the muscle suit or the muscle chest actually looks better. It's interesting that in a movie about people who let animal personas take over, a clown thug seems to refer to Batman as Man-Bat. It says that in the subtitles, at least on, I guess this wasn't HBO Max because they pulled that off again. I watched it on Hulu this time, but I think even on disc it says Man-Bat, and I listened to that over 2 or 3 times to see if that was a mistake or if that's actually what he's saying. So that was kind of interesting if that's what he's saying, that's in there, because it made me think, well, I wonder if Burton might have been more interested in another sequel if it had occurred to him to do that character, if he'd thought of Man-Bat. Selina starts out as a damsel in distress. Her arc is ostensibly about subjugating herself to a patriarchy and how she has to become a confident, liberated woman who stops deferring to men. But I mean, did she already have the ability she gets as Catwoman, or did she somehow get those from her near-death experience? I guess we did talk about that a little bit the other day, but she really does seem to need help from Batman here at the beginning, before she may or may not get supernatural cat powers, and that doesn't have really anything to do with her gender. I mean, I would have been just as helpless as she was, and also would have needed help from Batman. I can't remember if we talked about the notion of Robin showing up in this movie or not, so I'll mention this note. This would have been an interesting place to put him given the circus motif. He could have grown up in the same circus as Penguin. He'd have a unique take on so-called freaks. I get why Burton resisted that. He felt like it was too many characters, and I'm not sure Robin would have fit with his isolated, cut from the world Batman, but with the circus thing there already, it might have been cool. I've always wondered if there's any thematic meaning to the hello there sign that's in Selina's apartment. It's a great image, and it reads tacky and pathetic, which is the point of that first apartment scene. I like that set a lot, but the best I can come up with is she's so lonely, she needs her apartment to greet her. Selina already doesn't fit in this world and is too concerned with how it tries to define her, which is a commentary on the perceptions and expectations of the working woman in the late 80s, early 90s. The material girl. Every girl wants to be Madonna. Nobody can live up to that. You would have no Catwoman if Shrek didn't pick an easy password to protect his protected files. Why do characters in movies always do this? Everybody should be a hacker in movies. It's easy. His password is his dog Geraldo. And it's not quite as bad as Peg in Batman and Robin, where Batman protects the secret of Batman with a 3-letter password. But it's pretty bad. The cat ears were bat created on Selina's forehead in shadow from her glasses is a striking and memorable image, and was apparently a total accident that Burton took advantage of. I've always loved that shot. Selina sees herself reflected in damsels in distress and can't stand the vulnerability. Suggests that she thinks Batman has created a culture of dependence, kind of like 60s Batman, always waiting for some Batman to save you, she says. That might have been an interesting angle for exploring gender roles, but it's, again, somewhat superficial and dated as is. How does Shrek know that Oswald is so literally a penguin when he bribes him with the fish? I'm not sure how at that point he knows that Penguin likes to eat raw fish. It's bizarre, all the cues taken from 66. This was a thing I touched on the other day, but didn't quite get to the examples of Penguin running for mayor, stealing the Batmobile. Our research tells us that voters like fingers is a great line. And then there is the bit where Shrek is trying to get Penguin to run for mayor, and he starts talking about political history, and he mentions Nixon and Agnew. Never been sure how I feel about the real-world references in this surreality. We don't really do any of that I can recall in '89. I always think of this Penguin as a revoltingly perverted and womanizing person from the beginning, but was shocked this time not to write down any of those lines until 45 minutes in. Then after that, they just keep coming and coming. Penguin does have an opportunity for change in the movie. Leave the kidnapping plot behind and become a public figure. Reclaim my birthright, he says. It's not an opportunity to become a better man, of course. He still wants to use underhanded and violent means to become mayor, but he considers going from serial killer to influential, perceived, upstanding statesman. A part of him does want what he claims to at the beginning, and I thought it was just for sex, but there's something at least a little more to it than that. Why are there already Penguin for Mayor posters up in the fight with the Red Triangle Gang that Batman has before they try to get the mayor recalled? There's no election until they start getting people to go against him publicly, so I would think it would be really suspicious if they started campaigning and then suddenly they start trying to get the mayor out of office. That seemed like an accident to me. And it's blink and you miss it, but I caught it this time, and I was like, those posters shouldn't be there. They haven't started doing anything yet. We have a remote-control Batarang 15 years before Arkham Asylum. That's fun. More scenes where Catwoman is playfully destroying or stealing stuff would be great. This is the most classic Catwoman bit is where she's in the store whipping off mannequin heads and jump roping with the whip. I like all that stuff. Penguin tells Batman he's assessing the damage after the gang attack he helped Shrek plan, but he doesn't pretend he's above board for very long. I don't know why he gives himself away in this scene. You don't really think you'll win, do you? He says. There are some odd dialogue exchanges before this, but this is where it starts turning into kids playing with action figures. You're not the mayor. Things change. And is Batman supposed to already know he's running for mayor here? Again, I'm not sure because of the posters in the alleyway. I really like the roof sets in this movie. You've got that line where Catwoman says, "Who is the man behind the bat? Maybe you can help me find the woman behind the cat." That is the crux of the movie thematically. Have these people given up their humanity? What's left after they give in to their base instincts? Should Batman be roped in with the other two? This isn't explored, but it's introduced. The sexual thing here in that first scene with Batman and Catwoman is super awkward and kind of infamous now. It's ambiguous as to whether Catwoman is really groping Batman there, but I'm pretty sure that is supposed to be what's happening, and not to get too crass about it, but I wouldn't think with all that rubber he would even really be able to feel that. Moving right along, I think I like that there's not any other romance in this movie. We easily could have had a love triangle with a not Vicky Vale, and I like that it does that, or that it doesn't do that. Selina and Catwoman are played as two women in the same love triangle, which I like. The Batman outfit here seems way easier to cut through than before. I'm not sure why it's a step back. Then you get that line on the news, not the news, pardon me, Penguin has his speech, and he says, Eagle Scouts into crazed clowns and happy homemakers into Catwoman. I mean, is anybody buying that? Does anybody even know who Jack Napier was? I just don't know. The way Pfeiffer commits to this role is great. She actually holds that burger in her mouth, and it's not an effect. That's a real kind of classic, beloved moment with fans for this movie just because of how incredibly committed she is, and a lot of people thought that was a special effect, but it isn't. It's a real neat bit, super memorable. Selina and Bruce are both superficial and transparent in their irritation with the media. This is a bit that takes me out. She's worried about her reported weight, and Bruce is worried about criticism of how he handled the last gang attack. Also, that's kind of just contrived so that public opinion is already against him when Penguin tries to frame him. The people of Gotham are stupid. Everybody bought an obvious staged rescue, and they buy an obvious framed murder. That has to look suspicious. Even if Batman was going to kidnap the Ice Princess, with no clear motive, why would he use a remote control batarang? He's known to the police to be pretty precise about things. The intercutting of Bruce and Selina suiting up when she's in the car and he's in the Batcave is a good way to contrast the personalities, neurotic versus ordered. No one should ever go to public events in Gotham. Every single one of them gets attacked. Why doesn't Bruce go undercover, I wonder, to save the Ice Princess instead of dressing in his Batsuit, considering the police are after him at this point? I guess I like that Batman shows up and risks himself to save the princess, even though I think he could be smarter about it. But now I'm imagining this frame job in like a Mario game. Like his princess is in another castle, but somebody murdered this one and pinned it on him. I like that Penguin's methods go too far for Catwoman. She's willing to get revenge on the men who humiliated her, and I think only really wants Shrek dead, but she's actually somewhat sympathetic, again, especially compared to Penguin, because she has regard for life with the Ice Princess. Maybe it's just because she's female and she has a sense of loyalty to her own gender, but again, more to latch onto than with Penguin, who is just a crazy person with no chance at redemption. A few more pages, or just a couple more pages of notes here. Penguin tries to kill Catwoman just because he feels insulted that she won't sleep with him and thinks he's entitled to that. He is right, though. She did sort of send out all the signals. Pfeiffer's scream in the greenhouse is really memorable. I always thought that was kind of a powerful moment. The chase sequence is in the car, is in about the same place it is in 89 and feels a little bit obligatory. Like this is the place where a chase scene is supposed to happen, but it's different because Batman is fighting his own car while he's fighting, against Penguin's other, vehicles and things. It's insane, but at least it's not the exact same thing. Penguin has a kiddie ride Batmobile. I don't know how in the world he got that built so fast, and that's part of the cartooniness of this movie, but I really want one of those. It's great, and I wish that somehow that could have been merchandising. Batman thinks to record Penguin's voice so that he can use it in his speech later to make everybody know that Penguin is not above board, and it's really easy that he does that seconds before he says something incriminating. Batman also, I kind of forgot about this, blows up his own TV in his Batmobile because he's sick of listening to Penguin. Like the Joker in the first movie. Batman says he's a little worried when the car is about to go into a narrow alley, which is kind of fun because suddenly he's vulnerable in that movie, but then he has this really easy built-in mechanism to fit through and solve this exact problem. The "Who Let Vicky Into the Batcave" bit is, of course, a little tacked on. It starts with Alfred saying they need to talk about security with the Batmobile. He says we can't just take it to any Joe's body shop, but then that never pays off in any way. It's kind of weird that we never get the Batmobile again later, or that he's not on a motorcycle, which happens in Dark Knight and other Batman things. We do get the Batboat at the end, but not because he can't use his Batmobile. It would explain why it's a totally different car in the next movie if you consider Forever canonical with this stuff, but then everything else in that is also different as well, including the suit and the cave and everything. I like that Alfred gets stuff to do in assisting Batman. He gets to be kind of the man in the chair in this movie. He's got a little bit more screen time, I think. Bruce scratching his CD like a DJ is hilarious. I'm sure somebody has made a music video with that. Keaton and Pfeiffer both have unusual ways of pursing their lips together. It made me wonder if that's part of the reason Pfeiffer was cast. Not exactly the same. His is more of an upper lip thing, and hers is more of a lower lip thing, but they both have real unusual ways of holding their lips. When Bruce whispers to her about mistletoe, he goes really subtly into his Batman voice, and that's what tips her off. I really like that. The duck coming through the floor at the party is one of those great memorable moments. Penguin's theme in the score suits him, of course. It's one of the best melodies, new melodies in the movie. But I also like that it can be used as a dark lullaby, and it's kind of fun that it's in that umbrella mobile in the third act. Not sure, mobile versus mobile. It's the the thing over the baby cradle. Not sure why this penguin uses umbrellas, except that's a penguin thing, which is whatever, because penguin always uses umbrellas for no good reason, but I just wouldn't think you'd need that in the sewer, so I'm not sure how he landed on that motif. Maybe he does. Maybe there's just too much drippage from... But he doesn't seem to mind that. He's got black stuff coming out of his mouth, and I don't think that would be a big deal for this penguin. So, what else? So Penguin doesn't like it when Catwoman almost eats his parakeet, but then he seems fine risking the lives of his dozens or hundreds of penguins to put explosives out through the whole city. I don't know how Batman knew that Penguin was going to send a penguin army before he does. Alfred says the penguins are moving above ground, like they're ready for it. Batman has already headed his direction before he's even done anything. Almost finished here. Why does the countdown lady sound like a computer? It's like she's brainwashed or something. Penguin has a kinship with birds and doesn't want to see... Oh, you know what? I already mentioned that note. I had that note twice, apparently. Did Penguin breed the penguins, or were there already that many 33 years ago when they found him? Was a question I had. The duck head coming off and the duck exploding is maybe foreshadowing for Penguin's death. The sonar beacon that summons the bats was in Sam Hamm's script for '89. It originally comes from Year One and was also used in Batman Begins. He tried to get it in '89, and that was scrapped in the final version. I like that Batman beats Penguin with his real chosen animal motif. We get literally bats versus penguins, which is a thing I wish I'd mentioned the other day. I don't buy that Shrek can't tell that's Selina until Batman says her name. I get comic book logic, but I don't know, it seems like he would get that, even in what little internal logic we've got with this movie. Why is Bruce okay with Shrek knowing his identity? I mean, Selina already knows. They've had an exchange about that, so I don't know why he has to take his cowl off in that scene. He's turning into Spider-Man now. He's just got to get his cowl off real quick. Another legitimately funny line is, Bruce, why are you dressed up like Batman? That always gets me. Here's a motif that or a trope that you've always got to have in a movie like this. A villain you thought was dead that comes back for one more fight, or just to trick the audience into thinking that he's going to be there for one more fight and then just kind of fall over, sadly or tragically. He's Super Shredder. It's the Super Shredder hand that comes out and then drops. We have that with Penguin here when he dies at the end. Penguin's death is funny. Just the lines he has there are actually some of my favorite Penguin lines in the movie. I picked a cute one when he gets the umbrella with the bears on it, and I'll murder you momentarily. That's pretty good. And finally, this is a true Christmas movie. I didn't really talk about that in the podcast, but it's about giving goodwill and bad people who will take advantage of that sentiment. So anyway, just a few more notes that I wanted to make sure and throw out there because I spent the time to take them, so I thought some of you guys might want to know about them. Not interacting with the audience this time, but I've been broadcasting everything lately, so I thought why not do this one that way as well. But thanks a lot for tuning in, folks, and I will see you again this evening. If you happen to tune in for The Request, I'm going to be going solo tonight, and I'm going to try to be there as close to the normal 10 Central time as possible. I'm going to be 45 minutes away for dinner, but hopefully I'll be back in time. And I'll be shooting that when I get back, whenever that happens. But I'm watching a David Lynch movie called Straight Story, which came out in 1999 and is about a real-life thing that actually happened with a man in the with an elderly man in the mid-90s who goes on a cross-country trip in a lawnmower, and it's a really touching character piece that I'm excited to chat about. So if you have time today to watch that and you've never seen it and you want to hear me talk about that later, and hang out with me in the comments. It's on Disney+. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you again real soon. Hope you enjoyed the addendum, and also a quick plug for the next Rewind Unscripted Sunday night. As long as everything works out properly, I'll be doing another Batman thing. I'm going to be doing Batman vs. Two-Face, which is the second and last Adam West animated Batman movie, which came out posthumously, and I'm excited to talk about that with you as well. And hopefully I can get all my notes in this time. Anyway, thanks for bearing with me.